Henri brought some tools. Diane took all her clothes off and lay down to sun herself on the flying bridge. I watched her from the poop. Henri went clear down to the boiler rooms below where rats scurried around and began hammering and banging away for copper lining that wasn't there. I sat in the dilapidated officer's mess. It was an old ship. It had been beautifully appointed at one time. There was scroll work in the wood and old built in sea chests. This was the ghost of the San Francisco of Jack London. I dreamed at the sunny mess board. Rats ran in the pantry once upon a time. There had been a blue eyed sea captain dining in here. Now his bones were wove with immemorial pearls. I joined Henri in the bowels below. He yanked at everything loose. Not a thing. I thought there'd be copper. I thought there'd be at least an old wrench or two. The ship's been stripped by a bunch of thieves. It had been standing in the bay for years. The copper had been thieved by a hand no more. I said to Henri, I'd love to sleep in this old ship some night, and when the fog comes in and the thing creaks and you hear that big B-O of the buoys. Henri was astounded. His admiration for me doubled. Jack, I'll pay you $5 if you have the knife to do that. Don't you realize that this may be haunted by the ghosts of old sea captains? I'll not only pay you $5, I'll row you out and pack you a lunch and lend you blankets and a candle. Agreed, I said. Henri ran to tell Diane. He was amazed at my courage. I wanted to jump down from a mast and land right in her cunt, but I was true to Henri's promise. I averted my eyes from her. Meanwhile, I began going to Frisco more often. I tried everything in the books to make a girl. I even spent a whole night with a girl on a park bench till dawn without success. She was a blonde from Minnesota. There were plenty of queers, however. Several times I went to San Fran with my gun, and when a queer approached me in a bar john, I took out the gun and said, Hey, what's that you say? They bolted. I've never understood why I did that. I knew queers all over the country. It was just the loneliness of San Francisco and the fact that I had a gun. I had to show it to someone. I walked by a jewelry store. I had a sudden impulse to shoot up the window, take out the finest rings and bracelets and run, to give them to Diane. Then we could flee to Nevada together. These were mad dreams. The time was coming for me to leave Frisco or I'd go crazy. I wrote long letters to Neil and Alan at Bill's shack in the Texas Bayou. They said they were ready to come join me in San Fran as soon as this and that were ready. The fantastic story of what they were doing down in Texas came to me later. Meanwhile, everything began to collapse with Henri and Diane and me. The September rains came, and with it harangues, and Henri had flown down to Hollywood with her, bringing my sad, silly movie original, and nothing had happened. The famous director Gregory LaCava was drunk and paid no attention to them. They hung around his Malibu beach cottage, and they started fighting in front of other guests. There were recriminations behind the fence. That barred them from the swimming pool, and they flew back. The final topper was the racetrack. Henri saved all his money, about $100, spruced me up in some of his clothes, put Diane on his arm, and off we went to Golden Gate Racetrack near Richmond, across the bay. To show you what a heart that guy had, he put half of our stolen groceries in a tremendous brown paper bag and took them to a poor widow he knew in Richmond. We went with him. There were sad, ragged children, a housing project much like our own, wash flapping in the California sun. The woman thanked Henri. She was the sister of some seaman he vaguely knew. Think nothing of it, Mrs. Carter, said Henri in his most elegant and polite tones. There's plenty more where that came from. We proceeded to the racetrack. He made incredible $20 bets to win, and before the 7th race, he was broke. With our last 2 food dollars, he placed still another bet and lost. We had to hitchhike back to San Francisco. I was on the road again. A gentleman gave us a ride in his snazzy car. I sat up front with him. Henri was trying to put a story down that he'd lost his wallet in the back of a grandstand at the track. The truth is, I said, we lost all our money on the races. And to forestall any more hitching from the racetracks from now on, we go to a bookie. Hey, Henri? Henri blushed all over. The man finally admitted he was an official of the Golden Gate track. He let us off at the Elegant Palace Hotel. We watched him disappear among the chandeliers, his pockets full of money, his head held high. Wahoo! Howled Henri in the evening streets of Frisco. Kerouac rides with the man who runs the racetrack and swears he's switching to bookies. Diane. Positively the funniest man in the world. He punched and mauled her. There must be a lot of Italians in Sausalito. He wrapped himself around a pole to laugh, but it started raining that night as Diane gave dirty looks to both of us. Not a cent left in the house. The rain drummed on the roof. It's gonna last for a week, said Henri. He had taken his beautiful suit off. He was back in his miserable shorts and army cap and t-shirt. His great brown, sad eyes stared at the planks on the floor. The gun lay on the table. We could hear Mr. Snow laughing his head off across the rainy night somewhere. I get so sick and tired of that son of a bitch, snapped Diane. She was on the go to start trouble. She began needling Henri. He was busy going through his little black book in which were names of people, mostly seamen, who owed him money. Beside their names, he wrote curses in red ink. I dreaded the day I'd ever find my way into that book. Lately, I'd been sending so much money to my mother that I only bought $4 or $5 worth of groceries a week. In keeping with what President Truman said, I added a few more dollars worth, but Henri felt it wasn't my proper share, so he'd taken to hanging his grocery slips, the long ribbon slips with itemized prices on the wall of the kitchen for me to see and understand. And Diane was convinced Henri was hiding money from her, and me too, for that matter. She threatened to leave him. Henri curled his lip. Where do you think you'll go? Charlie. Charlie? A groom at the racetrack. You hear that, Jack? Diane is going to go and put the latch on a groom at the racetrack. Be sure and bring your broom, dear. The horses are going to eat a lot of oats this week with my $100 bill. Things grew to worse proportions. The rain roared. Diane originally lived in the place first, so she told Henri to pack up and get out. He started packing. I pictured myself all alone in this rainy shack with that shrew. I tried to intervene. Henri pushed Diane. She made a jump for the gun. Henri gave me the gun and told me to hide it. There were 8 shells in it. Diane began screaming, and finally she put on her raincoat and went out in the mud to get a cop. And what a cop. If it wasn't our old friend from San Quentin.